Hello everyone, welcome back to youtube.com/@CobaltWins. The sun has risen on a new day of postseason possibilities for our teams as we return to the Rift for Match 2 of the CWL Season 5 playoffs. Tonight's best of 3 will feature Group B first seed Reef Tsunami up against Group A second seed Connecting Esports. Reef Esports are titans of the CWL scene with many accolades in their trophy cabinet. The original Reef squad secured the title in CWL Seasons 2 and 3, and in Season 4 it was this very team, Reef Tsunami, that walked away with the trophy. The team completely rebuilt this season despite their previous success, and with a brand new roster, Reef have once again found themselves in prime position to fight for the championship. Their opponents this evening have also been around the league for a little while. Connecting Esports was formerly known as ShipX United before joining the Connecting org for this season. As ShipXU, the squad did secure first place in Division 2 last season, and now they are looking to step it up and try their luck at the highest level of play that we have here in the CWL. The winner tonight will go on to join Polymorphed in the upper bracket final, where the loser will of course be slotted into the lower bracket. Once again, my name is Crewman. By my side in the studio here for the second night in a row is the dashing Mr. Drake. What's going on, man?
Thank you for introducing me, crewman. Thanks for introducing everyone else. I'm super excited for these games and excited to get on with it. I hope everybody else in the crowd is super excited too, and I'm glad to be back for sure.
Yeah, should be a fun one. Once again, we have some Division 1 play on our hands tonight. Two teams that, hopefully are going to be a little bit more closely matched, actually, than what we saw yesterday, because that did end up being a little bit one-sided for anybody who was here.
Yeah, last night's games were, like you said, a little one-sided after the first one. The first game did look rather good, but as we saw last night, the result was in favor of Polymorph. They ended up winning the series 2-0, and definitely deservingly. They played super well in that second game, and like you said, really just stomped out the lights of LLR, and we'll have to see whether RET or CE end up progressing to play against Polymorph in that round 4 of the Division 1 playoffs, or whether we see a little bit of an upset. We like you said, no upsets really tonight. Both teams super evenly matched, so should be good for really entertaining games.
Yeah, pulling that bracket up on your screen there, guys. As we can see, Polymorph have gone on to that upper bracket in round 4, and Reef and Connecting Esports, you can see right there, match 2. Winner of this going to be meeting them in that upper bracket final. Limelight Royalty, of course, will be seeded into either round 2 or round 3, depending on the results of this very match.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see these two teams play. I've been waiting all night and all morning to see these two teams play, and it's just the pressure is mounting, the anticipation is mounting, and we're about to get into draft, so these two teams are literally facing off right now. It's super exciting, and the story is just beginning for all of these teams in the playoffs bracket.
Yes, indeed. Let's not keep you waiting any longer there, Drake. I do believe the squads are just about ready to get into that champion select. We do have a brand new patch today, Drake. This is 13.8, just dropped last night. Getting into that draft now, is there anything particularly noteworthy that you think we should mention from that patch?
I feel like Ezreal does feel strong. I'm not sure if it's gonna show up at all today. It hasn't really been too popular lately, and we were talking about some of the players' preferred champions when we were looking at the draft earlier on, just before this stream actually ended up starting, and leaning more towards the Xayah, leaning more towards maybe the older meta with the Zeri on some of these ADCs. I believe it was ShipX who mained Zeri and Xayah, so I'm not really expecting to see any adaptations in the bot lane quite yet, but you never know. Ezreal is a super strong champion, and with these buffs could be a little bit in a position to be able to take over.
Yeah, Ezreal is kind of one of those weird picks that always sort of exists on the fringes of the meta. He can never really, because he has such a unique identity in terms of other marksman champions, that there's kind of always a time where he at some point where he feels like a good pick, where Ezreal just feels like the move. But with those buffs, those times might be increasing in frequency. We'll just have to wait and see. It's not going to be any kind of AD carry priority to start us off in this one, though, Drake, because it is the Gragas on B1 for Reef.
Really strong solo lane pick. Of course, that's assuming it goes into the solo lane. We saw Gragas flexed yesterday in that series, and it wasn't played in the top lane, that's for sure. So Gragas able to be played anywhere. We might end up seeing it go somewhere else, but could be top lane, rather strong. Looks like Cho'Gath was picked into it. I believe Cho'Gath goes even in the lane, happy to scale, both do AP, so kind of both doing kind of the same job in the top lane if that's where this Gragas is going. But a really strong flex, and we'll have to see where Reef actually end up deciding to put it.
Yeah, certainly is a very strong flex. Many possibilities still available for that Gragas. The response, like you said, the Cho'Gath and then the Zeri going to be locked away as well for connecting for their old namesake AD in ShipX. And now the Jinx in response. So this is kind of the new age of hyper carry. Well, I mean, Zeri obviously a newer champion, but Jinx been more popular recently is really what I'm trying to say. And that does mean that the Lulu will be taken away from the Zeri and paired up alongside that Jinx.
Really strong from Reef to identify that Zeri is one of those champions that really encourages an enchanter to be alongside her, loves to have a Lulu, loves to have a Yuumi, but Yuumi's kind of fallen out of the meta, not super great anymore. So like you see, it's going to end up being a Thresh by Zeri's side, and I think it's really good here for Reef. They're in a good position. They took away the Lulu. It works really well with Jinx, and I would argue that Jinx is just a lot stronger in the meta right now, especially with the range, with lethal tempo stacks and rockets. Zeri's pretty much never going to be able to auto-attack Jinx in lane.
Taking a look now at our second phase of bans. Most likely going to be some solo lane bans coming out from both sides, although potentially some junglers could be banned away by Reef if they feel like, they're not really sure where the Cho'Gath is going and they kind of want to hedge their bets in that department.
Yeah, really interesting that we haven't had any jungle picks in the first pick phase. It's been something that we've seen teams kind of lean on in recent series, so definitely interesting. I'm really interested how these two teams end up developing throughout the draft, and it looks like Wukong was banned away, so maybe still choosing their top laner in the Reef department.
Yeah, it's going to be a couple of top lane bans removed over by Connecting Esports here, the Irelia and the Gangplank. Now the last ban for Reef, guessing it's going to be another jungle ban coming through. What other jungler do you think they might be concerned about here?
J4? I don't know. There's a lot
Already
of champions
banned.
in the meta. Oh, J4 is already banned. I didn't even notice. Sejuani's also banned. So and then it comes down to Wukong. I was going to say Vi. Yeah, Vi's gone as well. Olaf. And Olaf's an interesting one because it can be top lane, it can be jungle, and he kind of takes over in jungle, in my opinion. I feel like he's kind of really strong down there, and people underestimate it. But looks like the Olaf was banned away, and the Maokai ends up being picked up by CE. So a couple of tanky boys in the top half of the map right now.
Yeah, the Maokai lock-in for connecting. Really interesting to see Reef focus towards Mr. Bakal in the jungle there so heavily with their bans. You know, we know Mr. Was a big part of Connecting's success during the group stage. You know, often able to find really nice engages from the jungle position. So just trying to target him as much as possible in those bans. We'll still get his roots onto the Maokai, though. So that is still a very strong engage option for Mr. Bakal. In response, the Sylas feels pretty powerful into that Maokai, able to take away the Nature's Grasp. Can be really powerful in some situations. And now I think we're guessing this is probably the top pick. Yeah, for Captain N, going to be the Ornn. A little bit more frontline for the Jinx.
Yeah, a little bit of forgery happening in the top side this game, looks like. And definitely interesting to see that the Sylas was picked up. Like you said, a couple of good ultimates. And I think sometimes people and teams end up getting baited into just... there was a time where Sylas was a counterpick to Cho'Gath. And Cho'Gath was one of these champions that accelerates himself by stacking and is able to scale into the late game, and Sylas is like, oh, I can scale as well. So sometimes teams just get a little bit mind controlled by that old counter pick and end up picking Sylas into Cho'Gath a lot, despite some of the ultimates that are already there. So I'm curious if that had any impact, and it looks like it is going to be Cho'Gath into the Sylas, so maybe they did pick it as the counter. I'm not sure what's going on, but these two teams seem to have each other's number.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, the Cho'Gath ultimate, the Feast, is also pretty good for Sylas, just because he's going to be right in people's faces, and the AP scaling on that is nothing to be sneezed at. So it can give Sylas, obviously, a lot of additional burst. I'm not actually sure if Sylas gets the same like passive stacks that Cho'Gath
Yeah,
does,
yeah.
where it
That's
increases
what I was
base HP?
trying. Yeah, that's what I was trying to get at. Sorry, I
Ah.
I was a little convoluted in my manner, but yeah, Silas was the counter pick into Cho'Gath because of that. He does actually get the stacks anyways, so Silas will also be getting very tanky if he ends up stealing these ultimates.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that could look pretty good for Raccoon then. Gonna have to see how that ends up playing out, obviously, but I think Silas probably gonna be pretty comfortable in that mid lane matchup. But I want to direct our attention, Drake, to that Fiora that did come through on R5 for connecting esports. Captain and kind of threw down the gauntlet with the Ornn pick, and then the side of Luke just snatched that up immediately with the aggressive counter in the Fiora. What do you make of that in the context of the rest of the draft for connecting esports?
I think it solves a couple of issues that Connecting Esports were looking at when they were looking at their draft and when they were probably taking just a slight step back after picking the Maokai, picking the Cho'Gath, and picking the Thresh. They were lacking damage, and it's good to see that they identified that, at least in R5, and picked the Fiora so that they have some source of damage and are able to better fight in these team fights without just having pure Fronter back and praying that they keep this area alive long enough. I mean, Thresh Lantern and Maokai Steel are good enablers of keeping that Zeri alive, but you need more damage, and I think Fiora was a good answer to that. It's just, will they have too much AD? I'm not sure. It's definitely, I think it was good to identify that, though.
Yeah, I like it a lot. Good into the Ornn, obviously, would be very tough to deal with in the side lane later on. About half the duration left on our spectator delay, guys. Drake, which draft do you like better overall for game one?
I think when we were looking at drafts yesterday, so a big identifier we had for which draft won was just the ease of execution. And I feel like Reef has such an easy execution on their team fight, besides maybe Gragas ult, which can go a little awry. But you have Ornn ult, you have Gragas ult, you have Gragas engage, you have Ornn running in, you have Silas engage as well, with Maokai ult, with any of the other ultimates that he decides to steal. I feel like Reef is just easier to execute, and that's where my pick goes for this game.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And obviously, Reef with quite the pedigree as well for this squad. See if they're going to be able to once again find themselves, moving towards those grand finals, or if Connecting Esports, a team that has the same number of losses as Reef at the end of the group stage, will be able to swipe that spot away and make it a 100% Group A locked upper bracket final. We'll have to wait and see, guys. On to the Rift in just a short while for game number one. Welcome to the Rift, my friends, for Game 1 of tonight's Best of 3. Once again, in the upper bracket for Division 1 on the blue side, Reef Tsunami on the red side, connecting esports. Drake, any runes or summoner spells that you think are worth pointing out this time around?
I think First Strike on Gragas is definitely an interesting one. I think the iteration we saw last night was a little bit weirder. The Predator, not what we were expecting, but there's a little bit of action already happening.
Yeah, that was very cheeky from Raccoon. Just absconding over the wall, looking for the abduct onto Shipex, but the Zeri was just able to walk out of that one. So, cheeky attempt from Reef. Not going to come to anything, though.
Yeah, I was a little worried that we might see a couple of flashes burned or a couple of deaths in the early game, but Shipex really heads up, rather aware, which I'd hope. You know, it is the first game of the day, so you never know. That's a common excuse for solo laners, or sorry, solo queue players, you know, but not going to be the excuse today. Shipex dodges away, so just getting into the game a little bit cleanly. It's what you want to see, especially in a best of 3 series, and these teams have a lot of games to play, so need to keep it intact for the rest of the series as well.
Yeah, important to get off to a good start. You know, make sure that everybody's had their coffee, you know, had their snackies, used the bathroom, all that kind of stuff, and they're ready to go as we make our way onto the Rift for this first game. Lots of stakes, of course, since we are into the playoffs now. You know, still obviously a second life available for both of these teams due to the fact that we do have that lower bracket. But still, you want to be putting yourself in as good a position as possible to make a deep run in these playoffs. Nothing too crazy happening just yet. You know, we do obviously have a whole bunch of scaling on both of these team compositions, so neither side really feeling very pressured to go for any early plays, I think.
I'd hope not. You are pointing out something very important here, and I do think that both teams scale extremely well, so they're just probably banking on the fact that they can team fight later. We've talked about just how closely matched these two teams are, and I'm sure that they're rather aware of it, so it will come down to just execution and split-second plays.
Oh, why? Oh, Solo in the mid lane there. Has to flash away. Barely
I didn't even see it.
Yeah, that was a little bit of a close call for the Cho'Gath there. As Silas, I guess, got in a lot of burst, and Raccoon going back in, just lands the chains and gets the first blood just like that. Reef on top.
Reef on top. Reef taking initiative in this game, and Reef inside of connecting esports' jungle.
I didn't even see, so like they didn't actually know. Oh, that's a flash for the hook though. Wiggy's gonna get that death sentence onto the support, but Mr. Bakal was already so low on the tree. Wiggy's going for the play when his jungler was not in a position to follow up, and now the Thresh is gonna go down as well. It's a double kill for Kanze in the first 3.5 minutes of the game. He's flashing forward under the tier 2. Drakey's looking for more, he can't quite get it. As Shipex is forced to use both summoners to get away, and just about sidesteps that barrel coming over the wall from A's. And Reef now with an explosive opening to this first game.
It went from bad to worser. It's definitely not where you want to be for connecting esports, and we're about to get into a replay just to see how that all actually went down, how it played out. And it started with this kill in the mid lane, Raccoon doing so well to get that kill on the Cho'Gath, and as you see, Mr. Bako coming back into the jungle, just slightly missteps after the Jinx ends up getting hooked, and the W just instant one-shots him. Wiggy's in a position now where he's just going to get caught out. Jinx running him down with the Excited, does end up taking him down, and with that Excited just follows Shipex as well, getting him extremely low, but the flash ends up getting burned, and no summoners in the bot lane for either of the ADCs. Only summoners remaining are on the supports.
Yeah, and actually just on the Lulu, as Wiggies did also use the flash and the exhaust to go for that ill-fated play. While you guys were in the replay, Cho'Gath died again. Raccoon found another... Well, actually, this one wasn't a solo kill, actually. I believe that A's actually had made their way into the mid lane and helped out with that one. But regardless, that is now 2-0 for Raccoon on the Silas. And that money, those early kills, all 4 of them for Reef, are, of course, exactly where they want them.
Just as we were talking about, not wanting to make too many plays in the early game because you don't want to mess up. You don't want to make a mistake, and you don't want to get one of these late game scaling team fight comps ahead in the early game, and just playing safe because you do have a little bit of a fail safe, right? You can go into the lower bracket of the series, but you definitely don't want to lose this series. You want to be able to be in your best possible position for playoffs, for the finals, and misstep after misstep from Connecting Esports has put them extremely behind as two separate scaling comps. It's going to take really good play and really good execution from here on out for Connecting Esports to be able to find their way back into this game.
Yeah, a couple thousand gold already at 6 minutes is definitely significant. I do want to say that that second kill in the mid lane was actually really, really clean. The Fly was basically underneath his turret, or had gotten underneath of the turret, and Raccoon stayed in there just long enough to finish off the kill with the W, and then immediately flashes out away from turret range, like as the shot was about to come after him. So like it was really, really close, and Raccoon played it perfectly, actually, to get the kill and not give one back over. So props there for the Silas playing that one out really, really nicely. But yeah, like you said, I think it does feel like Connecting Esports is just a little bit out of sorts at the moment. Maybe they're just caught off guard because maybe they had a similar read as we were just kind of talking about, how these drafts are very heavily scaling and they weren't really expecting much to happen in the early game, and maybe Reef's aggression kind of caught them off guard there. But, you know, it's an important best of 3. You got to be ready for that.
Definitely good to see Reef firing on all cylinders, all of their carry champions and players performing extremely well and getting their early game leads. So definitely really important for Reef to be able to execute the way they have been, like you said, and Connecting Esports, like you mentioned, just not quite able to follow Reef's plays, not quite able to respond in the way that they need to, and just maybe the matchup mid wasn't exactly what they were planning. I feel like Cho'Gath into Silas is one of those matchups where if you're going to draft it, you probably have to have played it before. So definitely interesting to see how much it's suffering, considering that Connecting Esports were the ones that ended up drafting that Cho'Gath. But it might just be feeling them out. You know, it's the first game of the series, and you need to test the waters a little bit. So we can't count them out too soon, and even if they end up losing this game just because of a couple mistakes in the early game, it might just come down to draft diff, and they definitely could bounce back in the second game, or who knows, there's still tons of minutes left to be played. We're only 8 minutes in. We'll have to see how they end up adapting throughout this game as well.
Yeah, as you say, Drake, just pressing the 8-minute mark here. Rift Herald is alive on the Rift. I wonder, I didn't actually get to watch that many of Connecting Esports' games this season. But from what I've heard, you know, they really tend to put Luke and Mr. on the frontline tanks a lot, and they're kind of in charge of the engage, and Fly and Shipex are usually the ones on the carries. So Fly on the tanky Cho'Gath this time around. Maybe there is a little bit of a lack of comfort here. I didn't look at the OPGGs or anything, so I'm really not sure, but given the way that the early game has played out, I think that's definitely a possibility.
It is important to note that
the casket's flashed though. Good reaction from Fly there. Just barely manages to get himself on the other side of that explosive cask and will survive that attempt. But Aze and Raccoon here, the mid jungle, continuing to be proactive.
Definitely worth sending your cask for the mid laner's flash, and looks like there's another focus on the mid lane here.
Yeah, Mr. Bakal's turn now to roam in. That rupture will land for the dash over the wall, and Raccoon actually going back in, has the stolen the Cho'Gath, he flashes for it, and Raccoon picks up number 3. And Mr. Bakal now has to sadly lumber away back towards his turret. The gank attempt was completely foiled because of Raccoon's outplay in the straight-up 1v2.
Really well played from Raccoon to be able to notice that he has lethal there.
Revenge could be coming in. He goes back in with the chains. He gets a little bit of healing, but Chipex should be able to get this kill, and there is a shutdown going over to the Zeri. I didn't even see Chipex moving up for that one, but clearly that was a necessary move, I think, for the Connecting AD.
I mean, speaking of not seeing where the AD is moving, we've been so focused, in fact, on mid lane that we didn't even see that the ADC from the side of Reef Esports actually just was in the top lane, has been in the top lane. We saw a Jinx ult actually come down and try and help with the kill, so really interesting to see that they've actually ended up swapping lanes at 10 minutes. Now the ADC and the support for the side of Connecting Esports are mid lane as well. And yeah, I mean, these teams are just swapping around the lanes, like you said, for Herald, for these objectives. And maybe a little trippy for us because we just see a Zeri sailing over a wall randomly, but good from Connecting Esports to be able to pick up that kill.
Yeah, actually really nice from both teams to try and rotate their bottom lanes up to contest that objective, but it was, of course, Reef that were able to lock it down. ShipX will take the consolation prize of that shutdown onto the Sylas, which is, of course, going to give the Zeri a nice little chunk of change. Still about 300 gold behind this Jinx, though.
Yeah, Reef Tsunami in a very commanding lead right now, and like we were talking about, Reef has the kills on the correct people. A Jinx that is 2 kills up, or sorry, 1 kill now on the enemy ADC, but also 20 CS is not something we scoffed at. All of these plates as well, just picked up a couple more with the Rift Herald. It's just such a dominating performance from Kanze here.
I think that was 4 plates right there, unless Raccoon managed to farm one off before the Sylas left the mid lane. I'm pretty sure that was 4 plates into Kanze's back pocket.
Yeah, it does end up being shared, even though Aze wasn't quite in the lane, since he dropped the Rift Herald, I believe. Yeah. If whoever ends up dropping the Rift Herald does get the shared gold from wherever the Rift Herald is crashing, but half of that gold is still nearly a full kill, so Kanze extremely happy.
Angle from Raccoon, gonna collapse onto Fly. The Cho'Gath still healthy, trying to lumber away from this one, but the explosive cast gonna knock him back into the waiting arms of the mid laner. Raccoon looking to take down that kill, and we'll be able to secure the Sylas, though, on the front line, starting to get a little bit low HP. A's gonna go back in with the Billy Bop, gonna get that onto ShipX, who flashes over the wall to try and stay safe, but getting zeroed out now by the Lulu, as he's completely separated from his support. Not quite going to land, but Wiggies is completely caught up in no man's land now. Oh, but Raccoon lost track of where the Zeri was, gets shot in the back a little bit. That is 1 kill going back over. Raccoon, though, lands the chains and then the Q to finish off the kill. It's a double for the mid laner and a 3-for-1 overall. Reef Tsunami once again on top.
Kanze, what were you looking at?
Shot. Beautiful riposte from Luke. He's going to be okay.
Yeah, top lane. Not super relevant here, but we're about to get back into the replay. Luke, not quite in that fight, neither is Ornn, but looking here, we see the team fight. Raccoon chasing down ShipX, getting him extremely low. He's chasing him over multiple walls, but Zeri just has so much movement speed with her ultimate, does end up kiting out the Sylas. But on the opposite side of the fight, Kanze super focused on getting Bakalhau down, just melting that Maokai, but ends up getting shot in the back by ShipX because of that, and ShipX does end up falling, but dropping because you just didn't want to turn around and auto-attack a Zeri once is kind of absurd. Either way, they end up getting 2 kills for 1, and really good from the side of Reef, especially considering that they ended up securing the dragon as well.
They did. They are up now 2-0 in terms of dragons. We did miss another kill while you guys were in that replay. It was onto the Gragas this time, as Wiggies actually found a nice death sentence from Fog of War. And Fly was there for the follow-up. It was able to secure himself a stack on the Cho'Gath. So, you know, nice from Connecting Esports to actually be able to get a kill back there. But the straits are starting to look a little bit more dire for Connecting Esports, especially given the Dragon Soul that we have on the table, Drake.
Yeah, Infernal Soul is one of the most oppressive souls in the game. I would say right behind Hextech Soul. If one team ends up getting the Infernal Soul, it just feels like the game's kind of doomed. It's so hard to play team fights. The damage increase is just incredibly absurd. You get AoE on all of your abilities, including auto attacks. It's so frustrating to play against and so oppressive. So if that Infernal Soul does end up going over to either team, I believe that it's kind of... But Connecting Esports doing really well to maintain their current pace to claw their way back into the game slowly but surely, and keeping their eyes focused on the prize is what's really important here, despite such a huge goal deficit.
Definitely. They are going to have to try and keep themselves in it. They're going to have to definitely contest those dragons at one point or another, as the red buff is what's being contested right now. Cass comes out, not going to really be finding any targets, as we got fights across the map, actually. Raccoon looking for the 1v1 against Luke's Fiora. But where is the action going to happen? Yes, the Grand Challenge comes out from Luke, as the stolen Grand Challenge as well from Raccoon, who's going to get more healing. It's actually Fiora, I think they got a little bit more value out of that one, as Raccoon's not able to proc all the vitals. Meanwhile, on the top side, Reef have temporarily backed out of the jungle, moving back in now. Hungry for a little bit more. Not able to find it, though. And some skirmishes across the map, but nobody's going down in that one, Drake.
It looks almost like a Baron dance that you'd be seeing at 20, 30, maybe even 40 minutes, but these two teams are fighting over a Rift Herald at 15 minutes. This game feels blown wide open. Both teams are fighting as though it's literally in the mid-game, literally moving towards the later stages of the game where you can make a game-ending play. It's so crazy, but here's another fight.
Stolen Nature's Wrath. The Death Sentence comes in, brings the Silas closer. The Wild Growth there to keep Raccoon alive, and now the Nature's Grasp is going to come out, but the Silas is going to go down as the first casualty. Luke has teleported into the play. Fiora moving forward. The hook land onto Kanze. Wiggies finds his mark, and that's going to be 2 quick kills onto the carries for connecting.
Shipex absolutely popping off with that Zeri, and it's the strength of this comp. We didn't really talk about it much because Shipex and the side of Connecting Esports haven't really been in the driving seat this entire game. They haven't found the driver's seat. They haven't been able to secure themselves any of these objectives, any of these neutral objectives, but finding their way back into this game, playing around their team fights, and just running down the enemy team is what they want. And when you're in a position where Raccoon's on the disengage, you have Aze running away as well, and you have the Jinx, who's not excited, trying to limp away as well. You can absolutely run down these champions with the movement speed you have on Zeri, as well as Fiora. And we're about to see this replay, which will show you all exactly how it actually went down. So, as you can see, they're in the mid lane. Raccoon sees a chance to engage, steals the Maokai ultimate, engages with his E as well, but doesn't quite find anybody else in a really precarious situation, ends up getting re-engaged on by the jungler of Connecting Esports, taken down. Zeri follows up with an extremely good ultimate, and the huge flash death sentence from the support of Connecting Esports does mean that Shipex secures another kill. Well, actually, Thresh ended up stealing the kill onto Jinx, but another kill for the side of Connecting Esports is definitely what you want.
Honestly, deserved. Wiggy's really orchestrating that fight very, very nicely. The initial play to kind of disengage from what Raccoon was trying to do actually landed that hook onto the Silas, put the box up, prevented that follow-up from coming through immediately, and then the re-engage with, like you mentioned, that flash hook onto Kanze. Really, really massive for Wiggies. But now, we do have the third dragon alive in position for Reef Tsunami. They're already onto the objective. Connecting Esports got to get in here to contest. They have this second Rift Herald to drop for a little bit of pressure. They're going to be at the objective in time. Now it's an honest 5v5 in the river. Called Force Cut comes out, not reactivated though. It's a beautiful explosive cast. Gets Luke into a little bit of a tricky spot, but the Fiora going to be able to dash away. Meanwhile, Shelly in the mid lane. It's Raccoon on the flank. Silas into the back line. Meanwhile, the rest of the squad trying to fight front from back, trying to follow up on Raccoon's engages. Ace flashing over the wall. Will be able to get the kill onto the Zeri, but now it's Lulu's a little bit caught out, trying to flash away, trying to stay alive, and now here comes Luke Piango over the wall looking for that kill onto the Silas, just barely able to get it, and then the Lantern to get back out to safety and not fly a little bit too far forward. One more rocket to flash away, not in time. Kanze picks up the double. 5-2 now on the Jinx. 3-for-2 team fight. Reef Esports get the win.
That fight beautifully orchestrated by both teams, back and forth, ultimates expended with ease and with grace, but as we get into the replay, you'll notice that Connecting Esports a little bit on the back end of that one. So here you see the engage started with Raccoon on the back end, just finding that flank, super disorienting for the side of Connecting Esports, and Shipex caught in such a weird position, gets Cho'Gath ultimated by the Silas, gets flash engaged on by the Gragas, which means that he just falls immediately, and when you have no damage dealer besides the Fiora that's extremely weak when he's alone, you can't do anything in the team fight. Jinx ends up popping off absolutely fantastically by Kanze, and that Get Excited just, you scale so well into these team fights, especially when you're not the first person to go down.
Yeah, these front to back compositions are so fun to watch. Really a game of positioning, a game of target selection and just playing around your carries is how both of these squads kind of need to play it out. And we could see, the difference in that fight, as you mentioned, was the fact that Shipex was the one getting engaged on by Reef. The Zeri, having to flash out of that fight immediately, still kind of getting chased down by A's as the Gragas came over the wall there. Meanwhile, on the other side, Kanze did manage to stay safe in the back line and pretty much free fire for most of that fight, and that's how Reef were able to come out on top. You know, both junglers dropping, but still Reef able to lock down that Infernal Soul point for themselves, and now just 3.5 minutes away until that extremely powerful and permanent buff is going to be available for them to possibly secure.
And getting into these later stages, it's exactly what we talked about earlier. Oh, Cho'Gath just looking for something, trying to save this turret, but it's exactly... Oh, another fight.
Forge God going to be called. Doesn't find the mark, though. These calls with the Forge God, we've been... Oh, but the Death Rocket will connect on to connecting. Oh, Kanze definitely able to secure that one very nicely on the Jinx. 6 kills now, and that was onto the jungler. Drake, you know what that means.
Especially when you have a Cho'Gath Feast.
Yeah, the stolen variety is going to work just fine for Raccoon in that instance. Gets the last hit onto the Drake, and we can see the Silas starting to get a little bit beefier.
Yeah, these picks are just so pivotal for the side of Reef Tsunami, and we were talking about it earlier. These team comps thrive even more when they're easy to execute, when you have just ultimate abilities that you press R and you just kind of win the team fight, and that's what Reef has been capitalizing on, looks like.
Oh, that was the ambitious from connecting, wanting to do a little bit of camping to try and catch somebody out of position, but in the end, they will be the ones forced back in retreat.
I mean, Truman, we don't even have time to talk about the game because these players are demanding our presence. They're demanding our attention in this game. They keep bringing it back to the action, and I mean, I'm enjoying it, but guys, come on, let me explain what you're doing. You're not even giving me a chance to breathe and really digest what the heck is going on. I mean, that's
going to continue. Drake down the Nature's Grass coming out. The fight breaking out in the mid lane. The Rupture is going to land onto the Jinx. Watch Kanze off on the flank there. There's nobody protecting the Jinx. He's going to be shut down. Luke picks up that kill, flashes for it, does manage to secure it. Now Raccoon is here. The other carry is going to get hooked in. The death sentence connects once again for Wiggy. The connecting support, true to his name. They're going to lock down the mid laner now as well. A clean 2-0 in the mid lane for the side of Connecting Esports, and they're going to be able to shut down that Baron power play very effectively.
All I can say is shush. Wiggy's on this Thresh, absolutely popping off. We're going to see it in this replay, but I can't emphasize enough how crazy this guy is so far. And we see the Fiora on the flank here, so Maokai gets the go-ahead, tries to engage with the ultimate. Fiora in a super good position, and Jinx just has to be on the run. Kanze ends up falling because Fiora has so much movement speed, and Zeri Moment has so much movement speed as well with her ultimate. Dodges the Sylas, engage perfectly. The death sentence onto the Sylas, into Sylas Zhonya's. The death sentence pixel perfect after he comes out of Zhonya's. So well played from Wiggies to be able to secure that Sylas kill and keep his AD carry safe in that team fight. And I mean, Connecting Esports are far from out.
Yeah, but I gotta say, Drake, we gotta stop going into these replays because every time we go to a replay, Cho'Gath dies. It's starting to get a little bit unfair for Fly, unfortunately. But I guess, you know, maybe that's just unlucky. Either way, Kanze has really been dialing it in on these Super Mega Death Rockets. The accuracy from the Jinx has been impeccable. And that is how he was able to secure that last kill onto the Cho'Gath as well. And now we do have the Dragon, the Infernal Soul spawning. Fly just coming out of base, did have the teleport to make their way back into the mid lane, but now the side of Connecting Esports have to force their way into this river very, very quickly. And the Ornn is going to move forward to try and stall. He's just buying time. The Dragon gets 50%. He's got to find the Forge God call on 4 that time. And the damage is raining down. Kanze going to be able to get that first kill. The Jinx now excited, sprinting forward, looking to clean up some more. The Super Mega Death Rocket onto the Thresh. And it's looking like a clean sweep for Reef Tsunami. They're just going to wash over the opposition. They might not even need the Infernal Soul Drake. They could just go straight down the mid lane.
They could. The Death Hammers are really long, but I'm not sure whether Reef are just gonna maybe siege that inhibitor, back off, and then secure the Infernal Dragon and Soul directly afterwards. The rule in these positions, yeah, I was talking about it just now, but the rule in these positions, it tends to be 30 minutes. If you get nearly a clean sweep, you can end the game, especially if it's a champion that you can dive. The Fiora, not really that easy, but if it was like a Thresh or the Cho'Gath, maybe you could have dove at 30 minutes and ended the game. But without an open base, they do have to back off and get that Infernal Soul secured, but Reef Tsunami absolutely popping off in this team fight. We're about to see the replay, and these two teams not giving either one an inch, and Reef coming out on top there. They get the engage from the Ornn. They play extremely well with the spacing. They're keeping Zeri alive this time. Keeping Jinx alive this time, and playing super well to just scale into the team fight. Jinx gets excited, is able to chase down the Maokai. Thresh dies on the other side of the fight. Maokai Cho'Gath closely following, and I mean, Jinx just does so well in these sorts of front to backs, and it's really showing that Zeri is just kind of the worst champion at the moment, and maybe just don't pick her in these slots. I'm not sure, but Jinx definitely doing extremely well.
It could also be the Lulu diff, right? Because they picked Zeri Cho'Gath, I believe it was, on R1, R2, and then the Lulu kind of got sniped away from them. The Thresh, while obviously a great pick for Wiggies and a great pick just in general right now in the metagame, not as strong of a pairing with the Zeri. So, you know, that coupled with the fact that Zeri may be just the worst hyper carry right now on this patch means that, yeah, Shipex just seems a little bit outgunned this game, as we have moved up into the top lane to look for some more turrets for the side of Reef. A cask just casually tossed over the wall. He's offering a drink to his opponents in this trying time.
And Connecting Esports not really wanting to give away this tier 2 turret, but Raccoon gonna drop that ultimate.
Yeah, the Stolen Nature's Grasp is gonna push them off of this. Forced to give that one up. Oh, the Forge God out now. Onto the Cho'Gath. Does get the knock-up. Fly down to 50%. Has to flash out of that one. The Death Rocket almost enough to finish off the big Void Monster. Yeah, Kanze has really been hitting like at least 90% of these rockets.
And it's an easy rocket to hit, arguably, on a big old Cho'Gath if he's stacked up, if he's got those feasts, and he isn't that stacked up. He's died quite a few times, like we were talking about, but he's bigger than a Zeri, so I mean, there's that at least. The hitbox is rather large.
Production, could we get a little bit of a zoom in on that Sylas, if possible? Because he's becoming a very, very thick boy. But you know, it is the Baron that's getting secured. That's really the main story right now. Yeah, let's just take a look at that guy. Look how thick that Sylas is in this game.
Yeah, he's almost as big as the Ornn, and that's the Cho'Gath passive, like we were talking about. The feast stacks coming into play. Production is clicking on him right now, so we can see how many Cho'Gath stacks he actually has, which is 4. So he's getting a lot of HP. It's around 640 bonus health, which is not something to be scoffed at, that's for sure. That's more than a couple of items worth.
Yeah, Sylas been eating good this game. No doubt about it. Level 16 now for Raccoon. And let's see what kind of formation we're going to get out of Reef with this Baron buff. Obviously, they've already broken open the mid lane. So do you think Sylas top, everybody else in the bottom lane is the way to go? Feel good about it, Drake?
I feel like it's probably one of the only ways to go. Sylas does have that teleport, so can rejoin the fight whenever he needs to. Yeah. Some would argue that top lane is maybe better to... the top laner is usually better to be on his own in a split pushing lane, but I feel like in this scenario, Sylas can kind of win any 1v1 towards that top half of the map. So calling over the Sylas towards that top side, making the Fiora have to respond, and possibly just threatening to kill her and end the game if they don't respond with any more. But the cast
onto Mr. Bacalho that has the lantern, so we'll be able to passage darkly towards his team. Siege continuing now onto the bot lane tier 2. Wait for the next minion wave though.
And a lot of tension. Ooh. Yeah, a lot of tension between these two teams. Connecting Esports not really maybe analyzing how much of a position they're in and just how dire of the position that it is. So kind of trying to defend that tier 2 turret as long as humanly possible, but end up having to give it over. And Zeri not quite deciding where she wants to be. Connecting Esports has to respond somewhere, and we'll have to see where they end up trying to respond before their base is just entirely taken down.
Yeah, they're not responding yet to Drake, and they are losing quite a bit. That's the bot lane inhibitor that has been destroyed as Raccoon goes in with some chains. They do get riposted. Now Luke looking for the solo kill. Will be able to find the true damage with the Fiora. No, Raccoon flashing over the wall. The flash follow from Luke means that the solo kill for the Fiora will be there. Mid lane inhibitor has responded. The engage from Mr. Bacalho is kind of nullified by the Kaz, and the Maokai is going to go down first. Fiora on the front lines riposting, but the Jinx still free fire, and Kanze still untouched in the back line. The Jinx gonna be able to clean it up with the triple kill. So Mega Death Rocket, oh, the lunge from Luke, just barely getting out of the way of that one. And that should be the end of the game, though. Reef Tsunami, 22-10, Infernal Soul in tow. They end the game just after 30 minutes.
Reef Tsunami will move on to 1-0 in this series, where if they end up winning, they get a straight-up pass to round 4 in the playoffs, 1 win away from the playoffs finals. Really good of them to be able to secure this, and one more game is all they need.
Yeah. And that first one definitely felt pretty convincing, right, Drake? They, again, the side of Connecting Esports, they had a couple of moments where they were able to find some big kills, but overall, like in the team fights and just throughout the game, it definitely felt like Reef had a lead, had the advantage.
I 100% agree. I definitely feel like no disrespect to any of the players in this game, right? But Shipex just was on the worst champion this game, and I think the damage graphs show it as much as humanly possible. 45,000 damage on Kanze by the end of that game, nearly double it, a little bit over double the damage that Shipex dealt, and Shipex not quite even the highest damage dealer on his team. Luke just a couple of damage higher than him, but Shipex doing extremely well. The spacing was good, the team fights were good from the side of Connecting Esports, but not quite able to output the damage that they wanted. Like you said, it might have been a combination of the champion not having Zeri as well as just being Zeri. Not having the Lulu as well as just being Zeri in the current meta. But they played extremely well, but Connecting Esports not quite winning out in the draft, and it does mean that a very convincing win did come out from the side of Reef Tsunami.
Yeah. Pretty convincing, pretty dominant, very bloody, honestly. Reef played that one out extremely aggressively and with a scaling composition as well, but it worked out splendidly for them. Able to secure this first win. Who would you look towards as your Game 1 POG there, Drake?
I do think that Kanze had an absolutely fantastic game. He played the Jinx and he played her well. Landed tons of Super Mega Death Rockets, like you were saying, across the map. I think Ornn is definitely a contender for me. Keptanen doing exactly what his job was, dying 0 times in that top side, not letting that Fiora become any more of a problem than she already kind of was, doing tons of damage. And really well played from really all the members of the side of Reef Tsunami, but the MVP does end up going over to Kanze for me.
Fair enough, fair enough. The boom boom damage vote, it can be hard to argue with sometimes. I do think I might not necessarily be aligned with you this time around, Drake. I think Captainin and AK are both, very, very worthy of some recognition here, as both did not die in this first game. 0-0-10 for Captainin, 0-0-18 for AK. So really beautifully done by them. Personally, I would look towards Raccoon in that mid lane position, actually. I think that might be a little bit of a contentious vote from me, but, the Silas was able to find at least 2 solo kills, I think maybe 3, and really was a large part in why Reef found their advantage as early as they did, right? It kind of came from the mid lane and then snowballed from there. Raccoon also did overextend once or twice in those fights, but that's, maybe what I would vote towards, but definitely, you said it, everybody on Reef played super, super well, so I think no wrong votes necessarily.
Yeah, no wrong votes at all. Like you were saying, I do think that Raccoon had a couple of instances. This not necessarily one of them, the one that's on screen right now, but definitely a couple of carry instances, definitely won his lane and definitely did well for his team by winning that lane and getting himself in a good position. We'll have to see how the second game ends up going and whether it's just a story of mid-gap or whether there's a little bit of contention in that mid lane in the future. Super well played from the side of Reef Tsunami, and I'm happy to see what comes out of them in the next game. I believe we're about to go into a break, crewman, so I'll leave it to you, man.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to be going into that break, as you say, Drake. Don't go anywhere. We'll see if Connecting Esports are going to be able to fight back in Game 2. See you soon. Welcome back, everybody. Just getting ready now for our Game 2 Champion Select. Drake, what kind of adaptations would you like to see from Connecting Esports in order to give them a little bit of a better shot here in this next one?
Well, I think initially when we talked about these two teams and we talked about what they might be picking in the first game, we were talking about Shipex and what he might prioritize with the Zeri, with the Xayah, and what he's historically been good on. And I think that Xayah is a really good champion in the meta right now. So I feel like moving away from that Zeri, maybe not exactly what they should be looking for, maybe aiming to just secure that Xayah, play something else on Comfort that's more prevalent in the meta right now, and maybe even ban away that Jinx. I feel like Jinx is a really strong champion as well, and if you can't secure the Lulu away from the Jinx as well, or the Thresh, then maybe just ban the champion outright. We'll have to see, and I feel like maybe ADC is kind of the focus in this draft so far.
Yeah, I do feel like the Jinx pick does need to be dealt with in some way by Connecting Esports. It looks like they are going to be swapping over onto the blue side here for this second game, so that may assist them in actually accomplishing that.
Yeah, Reef Tsunami, I feel like they played extremely well, and I feel like Connecting Esports might have been trying out a few things. It was first game of the day, first game of the series, and first game between these two in the playoffs bracket, so I feel like maybe edging away from that Cho'Gath in the mid lane might also be another option. Like you said, Fly on those carry champions in the mid lane is another thing that we might want to see from him.
Yeah, I think definitely a pivot for Fly this game is something that I am certainly going to be looking for. It looks like it's going to be some more focus on Mr. Bakal once again from Reef here in this first banning phase, trying to get some of these engage options removed. The Gragas is going to be identified by Connecting Esports as the problem. Now, is Jinx left open? I think is the biggest question right now.
Looks like it might be, and if Shipex doesn't want the Zeri or the Xayah, I do think Jinx is definitely a good option. We'll have to see what he's actually comfortable in playing, but 7 seconds left, and it's a Vladimir ban, so a little bit left field. We maybe weren't expecting that one just because...
Must be a Fly comfort pick.
Yeah, it must have been a Fly comfort pick, but the Jinx, good to see that Connecting Esports are right on the money and feeling the pulse that we're feeling, and good to see that they're on the same page.
Yeah, that Jinx B1 lock-in, I think, makes a lot of sense. It was, of course, Gragas B1 last game, and the Jinx kind of slipped through there to the 2-3, but now I think we have been able to identify that the Jinx is just kind of the best marksman champion right now. So taking that on Blue 1 is going to be absolutely necessary. Connecting Esports are going to be able to make that happen. And now the response from Wraith is going to be the Graves, who, of course, did receive some buffs, not on this new patch, but on the previous one.
Yeah, don't get me started on how excited I am to see my champion or one of my champions in this draft. I love Graves. I think the champion is super strong and just so annoying to play against. The smoke screen, extremely oppressive, and it's literally just a mini Nocturnal, but you can just press it on somebody and it's only a 16-second cooldown. This ability is so obnoxious. But on top of that, like you said, the buffs that just came out, he can build his crit build extremely efficiently again. He has a higher crit chance or crit percent damage, which is I think 20 to 30% on the buff on his pellets. So he does more crit damage now if he goes that build. Good to see that they're opting to select it, and the Milio a good deny it as well, I think, and so much range in this Jinx Milio lane.
Yeah, interesting. The Lulu was open. I don't remember if Milio was banned in the previous game. It may have been. And maybe the side of Connecting just feel like that is just a better pairing with the Jinx than the Lulu would be. But I'm a little bit surprised, honestly. We just saw the power of the Jinx Lulu in the previous game and could have easily gone back towards that. And the Lulu is also great alongside the Twitch. I wonder if Reef are going to want to go back to that. No, they want to prioritize the Sylas for Raccoon instead. So, obviously the Cho'Gath has been locked in again by Connecting. So if that is going into the hands of Fly once again, then Raccoon wants to be ready for it.
Yeah, I'm definitely a little bit concerned about where the draft is headed right now. I feel like Connecting Esports might have seen a little bit of their struggle being attributed towards that mid lane, like you said, a little bit of a MVP vote for you for Raccoon in that mid lane with the Sylas against the Cho'Gath. So I feel like opting back into that matchup might be a slight mistake or just a misjudgment from the side of Fly. We'll have to see if Connecting Esports actually have Sylas's number this game, or whether the Cho'Gath ends up going to a different lane, like you said. Definitely interesting, and we'll have to see where the other bans go as well. Looks like Olaf and Lulu have been banned away, so since Lulu wasn't locked in R3, they end up banning it away. Really good read from them, and I think that you were right on the money. Twitch definitely is super happy to have the Yuumi Lulu, so glad to see that a couple of the enchanters are gone.
Yeah, I wonder what the side of AK is going to go for now. Alongside the Twitch, you also have the Graves, obviously, in the jungle, so that's, you obviously have a lot of damage already. You're going to need some kind of good facilitating pick here in the support position. I imagine they're saving R5 for the top lane.
How do you feel about Rakan? No! There's no way! There's no way! They're in my head, I'm in their head. I am one with Reef Tsunami right now. Am I in their call? Are we doing the draft together? What's going on here? I literally said it.
Color caster, Drake.
No way. There's no way. So, okay, apparently Full Metal is their coach, and he's American, so maybe there's a little bit of a Hamburglar cast and coach little coercion here. You didn't hear from me, but Rakan, super good pick here. I think it does what you're talking about with the facilitation for these carries. It gives them a little bit of healing. It gives them engage, which is also very important for Twitch, for Graves. They need a little bit of setup. So Rakan is super good pick here and strong in the meta. So extremely happy to see that they ended up picking that up. And LeBlanc looks like Cho'Gath will be in the top lane, and I'm super happy to see that as well.
Definitely. Connecting Esports, winning out, it looks like, in the mind games, kind of baiting Raccoon into going for the Sylas early on, allows them to ban out the Lulu. But now the Rakan pick, as you were saying, also does feel pretty powerful in this situation. Rakan Twitch actually is a pretty well-known duo lane as well. Rakan able to battle dance off of the invisible Twitch can be really dangerous and can definitely catch people by surprise. So I do really like that pick as well, Drake, and a great prediction from you, of course. But I love the 4-5 response from Connecting Esports as well, to go with the LeBlanc and then the Wukong, who somehow managed to slip all the way through the draft to the very, very end. That's going to be able to get locked in by Mr. Bakal, who's going to have a more explosive engage option this time around compared to something like the Maokai. This is probably a little bit more in Mr.'s wheelhouse. And then last of all, of course, the Camille on R5 for Reef. Let's take stock of everything that's happened. What do you think about that? What do you think about those last few picks, Drake?
Like you said, there's a lot of really interesting and good stuff to take away from the last few picks in this draft. LeBlanc, I was talking about it with you actually yesterday on the cast, where we were discussing just LeBlanc plays super well into Sylas. Sylas is not happy to steal that ultimate. It's similar to the Corki matchup. Sylas steals the LeBlanc ultimate, and it's whatever ability LeBlanc actually just used. So if LeBlanc just used her Q, Sylas only gets the LeBlanc Q as his ultimate, and that's a huge cooldown, so not something that you really want on the Sylas. So really good counter matchup in the lane. LeBlanc has range into him and does tons of burst, so really impressive in the early stages as well. You also see the Cho'Gath being kind of picked into the Camille. I feel like the Camille was a really good reactionary decision for Reef Tsunami, and has that true damage, has the percent HP damage, so Cho'Gath going to be suffering a lot once she gets her empowered Q, once she has Divine Sunderer. This champion is going to be doing so much damage to Cho'Gath, so I feel like the lane will be a little bit rough. But like you said, the Wukong, another really good pickup from the side of Connecting Esports, a really good read, another counter for them. They counters Graves, it's really good into him. And on top of that, he just does so much damage with the Divine Sunderer and has so much engage onto backline units like Graves, like Twitch, that I'm just super excited to see these two teams face off. And their draft has gone so well. Both of them probably very happy with what they walked away with. And it'll be interesting to see how these two teams execute them.
Yeah, 100% agree, Drake. I think some really fantastic drafting on both sides, but particularly for Connecting Esports, right? As the losers of Game 1, really needing to come out with some adaptations for this second game, and using their side selection and the flexibility of their players really, really beautifully to come out with, I think, what we consider to be a much stronger draft for them compared to what they had in that first game. But overall, some great answers, of course, on the side of Reef as well. Which composition do you like better for this second game? You have a prediction for Game 2 here, Drake?
So this one's completely biased. Last time I voted Reef just because it was easier to execute. This time I would vote CE if I was voting on pure analytics and whether I think their team is easier to execute compared to the others. But Reef has Graves on their team, so I vote Reef.
Ah, the Graves bias coming in from my co-caster here. I see. Well, Reef do also have momentum coming off of that first game. We're going to see if they can build on that and secure the 2-0 tonight to match the side of Polymorph, who of course did secure a 2-0 of their own. Reef looking to remain on even footing, connecting esports, looking to rise up all the way from Division 2 to potentially make their way towards a Division 1 upper bracket final. Don't go anywhere, guys. We'll be right back with the Cobalt Wins League playoffs. Welcome back, my friends, to Summoner's Rift for Game 2 of the night. Swapping sides, of course, for this second game, connecting esports over to the blue side with selection after Game 1, and Reef Esports now positions on the red. Looking like a little bit of an even more casual level 1, potentially, than what we had previously, Drake.
Yeah, not quite a 5-point Jinx, getting a little bit of a safe ward there in the bottom. Tri-brush, really good to see from her. Don't want to play too aggressively into champions like Twitch, into Silas, into Graves. Any of these three champions gets an early game lead, they become such giga problems in the later stages of the game, and that's not something you want to risk. So connecting esports, opting for a little bit of a safer start, like you said. Fly getting a little bit of poke down in the early game. Good to see. And yeah, high spirits for both these teams. It seems like a little bit of XP for Raccoon. Going to be great. He's going to get level 2 off the first wave now. Super happy about that, I'm sure. And yeah, these two teams definitely ready to face off and see what each other are made of.
Yeah, Raccoon going to need all the help that he can get in this mid lane matchup, as you illustrated for us, you know, in that drafting phase. This is a very LeBlanc favored matchup, so we'll see if Fly can have a little bit of a better game 2 here for us. We are seeing A's on the Graves. Very, very exciting. Fleet Footwork, what do you make of that rune choice? Are you a Fleet Footwork Graves enjoyer?
I am a Fleet Footwork Graves enjoyer. I feel like it's his best rune at the moment. It's also good to see that he didn't start a potion. I feel like a lot of Graves a lot of Graves players definitely opt to take that potion, and I feel like it never ends up paying off. You see it in his inventory for literally the entire game. He pops it at maybe 8 minutes, and is like, oh, well, that's nice that I have a little bit of HP, but I'm going to reset anyways. So opting to not take that potion was, in my opinion, the better choice. He has the fleet footwork, he heals off of the camp so much, and is just such a healthy clearer that he will never need it. And Wukong opting for that potion does mean that he's going to be able to clear healthily as well, but since Wukong needs it and Graves doesn't, he's going to be 50 gold up. So really good to see that he ended up opting not to take it.
Mid laners immediately at each other's throats very early on here, trading aggressively in that mid lane. Skeptinin gonna get ruptured just a bit. You know, speaking about difficult lane matchups, this one in theory should be very, very heavily Camille favored. A little bit unfortunate for Luke. Obviously, Luke had the counter pick in that previous game, you know, trying to play the Fiora into the Ornn, but unfortunately, the rest of the map kind of fell apart for the Fiora and was never really able to establish much of a presence in that side lane, and now kind of having to play on the back foot. Cho'Gath getting flexed up into this top lane means Captainin gets the Camille counter pick, and we'll see how Luke is going to be able to fare up there. Also, of course, Shipex now on this Jinx, I think is going to be very, very important for us to keep an eye on.
Definitely, Shipex on this Jinx, like you said. Different champion from last game, not one that we've seen him play as much as the Xayah or the Zeri perhaps, but super strong in this meta. Has the Milio, you can see, is able to auto-attack from outside of the turret range. It's kind of ridiculous with those rockets. And
landing in mid, ignite down, Raccoon chained up underneath his own turret. The last auto comes through and Fly picks up the solo kill, flipping the script from that last game.
Yeah, Silas definitely not happy to be back in chains, probably a little bit upset actually, maybe even traumatized. And TP's back to lane, a little bit behind at the start of this game, not where he was last game, and good to see that it was maybe just a narrative of Cho'Gath really sucks into Silas, and that might be what the claim is, but Super Saiyan A's looking for something in the bot side.
Yeah, A's is going to walk over a ward though, which does mean he's going to take a little bit of damage on his way in, but Shipex, oh, I thought maybe if AK had the grand entrance there, could have gone in for the knock-up, but maybe it was on cooldown.
Graves maybe not resetting on vision, a good angle for him to reset. Obviously knowing where that ward was means that he can back safely without moving too far. The ward also gets spotted by the Silas and pinged, so Reef, Tsunami doing really well to keep track of all of Connecting Esports' vision in this early game, despite a little bit of a mishap in the mid lane for Reef. Reef Tsunami still look like they have a little bit of a commanding lead in this game so far.
Well, they're down about 1,000 gold, so I don't know if it's really that much of a lead there, Drake, but
maybe commanding presence is what I meant.
Sure, I could see that. You know, definitely at least push in the bottom lane for the time being, but not really able to translate into really a super early Drake take or anything like that. You know, Graves and Wukong, honestly, two champions that aren't really that good at taking early dragons. You know, Wukong can do it, but it kind of takes him a while, and he takes a lot of damage, especially from something like a Cloud Drake, has actually a lot of DPS, so probably a couple more clears for the junglers before we want to start playing for those neutrals, I imagine.
Cloud Drake definitely one of those dragons as a jungler that you are a little bit traumatized by. It does so much damage, it's kind of absurd, especially considering it's the worst dragon in the game to take, arguably and objectively. But despite that, it's definitely interesting to see these builds coming out from the junglers. We're talking about Sheen for the Wukong, that's pretty normal and pretty standard. It's good to build into that Divine Sunderer, and your auto attack enhanced damage with the Sheen proc is definitely something you're aiming for. But this dagger from Graves does actually mean that he's going to be building into that shield bow, I would assume, or at least one of the crit items. So good to see that a positive read and a correct read on this meta and on the Graves buffs with the crit pellets change is definitely making an impact on Aze's build, and he'll be building into one of these crit items and might actually give a little bit of Randuin's value towards Luke, but looks like Wukong and Graves are just kind of looking at each other in the river before they end up taking the reset and maybe getting that Noon Quiver as his second back for the Graves.
Here comes Aze over the wall, though. Just going to be clearing out a ward for the time being. Looks like that wave is going to push back towards Connecting Esports, I believe. No, actually, it looks like it's pushing away towards Reef at the moment. Graves just kind of hovering on vision once again, though. He's able to get another ward in there.
Yeah, and here come the resets. It's a little bit of push and pull on either side of this lane, it looks like. and Shipx trying to freeze it, maybe have it push into him a little bit to deny a little bit of CS for Reef Tsunami, and gonna take that reset afterwards as well. But Bacal having a really good punish, taking this red buff, and especially with Fly's huge.
Ooh.
Sorry, that was a little bit of a
surprise there. Fly going back in with the distortion, but it's gonna be okay for now.
But yeah, a really good punish from Mr. Bacal, how to see that Graves is on the bottom side of the map, knows that the buff should be up, and steals that red buff. So Wukong getting a large lead in this early game, currently a whole level up on the Graves.
Very nice, yes indeed. Good that you point that out. The Duck's not quite going to land for Raccoon. Chain connects for Fly. I don't think quite got the electrocute proc that time, no.
LeBlanc is so oppressive in this lane. I feel so bad for Raccoon, but he's holding his own. He's doing really well despite that early game death. He hasn't died again. He is a combat summoner down on the LeBlanc, so it's kind of only natural that LeBlanc does deserve earning herself that early kill and a little bit of a lead, but...
The chain lands this time, Raccoon. What spell does he have? The distortion is stolen, but the LeBlanc is going to flash away the grand entrance. Almost, or the battle dance almost enough to keep the mid laner alive, but AK now is the one in trouble. Flashing forward is Shipx for the last auto attack. Gets that kill onto the support. The collateral damage not enough to answer back. And in the mid lane, it is Connecting Esports 2-0.
A really dominating performance from Connecting Esports, especially considering that they had such a rough first game in this series, and they're bouncing back. They have fresh minds, they have fresh drafts, and it's winning them the game so far. We'll have to see in this replay just how that played out. Like you said, the Jinx did end up flashing for that kill later on, but it all starts with this engage from Fly, baits in Raccoon, ends up landing the chain, which sometimes those chains aren't what you want to take, steals the LeBlanc ultimate, gets the distortion, like you said, one of the best ultimate abilities you can steal from LeBlanc, but it's still a LeBlanc ult, and Rakan ends up getting caught out, taken extremely low, and the flash from Shipx does secure him the kill as well. So both of your carries getting a kill, extremely good for the side of Connecting Esports, and I mean, that play is only up for Connecting Esports.
Yeah, well, they did lose out on the Dragon, so it's not 100% upsides for Connecting Esports, but, you know, that is the reason that A's wasn't in the mid lane in time to actually help in that fight, so still, I think, certainly a very positive trade for Connecting Esports, especially if they're able to lock down this Rift Herald as well.
Does look like the tempo has earned them the Rift Herald, but Ace is looking to punish on the bot side.
Yeah, the cross map, a reality for Reef. There's going to be the grand entrance, the knock-up onto Shipx, who does not have flash, who used the flash to get that kill in the mid lane, and AK is going to get his revenge by taking the last hit.
A little bit unfortunate that AK had to secure that kill there. A's not quite in range, but...
Raccoon could be in trouble once again. Flashes away from that little Melio bubble, but the Wukong is here again as well. And once again, it's going to be the auto attack onto the turret, and once again, it's the support that takes the money.
A's in a little bit of a good position to be able to maybe secure a kill here.
Oh,
yeah, like you said, collateral damage.
One shot from the river onto the Wukong, but Mr. just barely able to survive. Shelly not going to be so lucky. Not getting off the charge into the turret there. Mission failed for Shelly.
Mission failed for Shelly, but mission success for Connecting Esports. Despite that mission being a failure, they ended up getting another kill onto Raccoon, and it's just because he keeps stealing these LeBlanc ultimates, I would assume, and this time he got a chain. It's also, it is good, it's probably one of the better ones that you can take, but it's still a LeBlanc ultimate. It's not great, and once again, just caught in a precarious situation where LeBlanc is doing more damage, and the support for the side of Connecting Esports being super hyper-aware and always hovering around that mid lane. Wiggy's really doing well to just be there, be a supportive factor for Raccoon, and securing that kill, like you said, which wouldn't have gone to the side of Connecting Esports if he wasn't there at all.
It did obviously mean that Shipx was unfortunately left all alone down there in the bottom lane, which did give Reef their first kill of the game. So, you know, that was... Wiggies did have to sacrifice something to make that play happen in mid. It's kind of, you know, debatable whether or not that was worthwhile overall, I suppose. You know, trying to snowball this mid matchup could definitely be a win condition for the side of Connecting Esports, so they can get this LeBlanc really, really far ahead. You know, there's 2 AD carries and no true tank really on the side of Reef, so, you know, once Fly gets a couple of items, he can start nuking people.
And talking about the 280 carries on the side of Reef Tsunami, looks like they're pairing up for now. Graves looking to clear a little bit of vision in the bot side and kind of calling for a play, but looks like LeBlanc and Connecting Esports as a whole is kind of making a read. The vision is a little awkward for both teams, so we'll have to see how this ends up playing out.
Yeah, the Graves waiting in the river, not wanting to allow them to face check, though. Just the solo Graves can definitely get burst down, so in the end, it looks like both junglers just going to vacate the area.
Yep, it looks like Shipx didn't face check this time. Really good from him to not do that and to have the restraint. So A's not quite able to burst anybody out, just decides to back away and does have that shield bow, obviously, so not a lethality build, not able to one-shot anybody just yet. Going to be relying mainly on those auto attacks, not his Q or his W or R damage, and mainly looking to do extended fight damage and just damage over time, as well as healing and drain taking in these fights. Looks like Mr. Bacalho has an angle though.
That's AK trying to battle dance away. We'll be able to get back towards the turret. Kanze now knocked up by the second activation of the Cyclone. Milio skill not going to connect though. And that was Wukong ultimate expended in exchange, I guess, for the spray and pray and the exhaust from Kanze. Oh, Fly now getting chunked out a little bit by Graves in the river, and Graves gonna get chunked out in return as he forced to dash over the wall. Silas also rotating down as this dragon is alive. The team's clearly fighting for position right now in the bottom side river. Mr. and Fly now waiting patiently in the tribe rush.
A little bit of back and forth.
We got a little bit of a skirmish happening, but let's continue to take a look at this bot fight for now, as the dragon has been started up by A's, but the side of Connecting are moving in to respond. Meanwhile, the Camille did find the solo kill in the top side. The fight breaking out down here in the bottom side river. Mr. Bacall extremely low, going to get cleaned up by the Silas, and it's absolute devastation in the bot river on the side of Connecting as Reef come away massively ahead. It's the 4-for-nothing Drake across the map. They're going to get their second dragon as well.
Nearly a clean sweep for the side of Reef Tsunami, playing extremely well in that team fight to find all of these kills, find all of this damage, and just pick them up cleanly. No real complaints here from me. Nobody even dropping really that low on the side of Reef Tsunami, and looks like Connecting Esports a little bit disconnected in that team fight.
I didn't really catch how it was starting necessarily. I was a little bit distracted by what was happening on the other side of the map as well. Hopefully we can get at least one of those replays up for you guys in a minute here, but here we go. We're going to be able to take a look at it, so walk through it, Drake.
Yeah, well, we did see how it all began. We were watching the river initially. Silas in the Dragon Pit has a really good position. Looks like he had the Stolen LeBlanc ultimate, so the distortion gets him into the middle of the fight. Twitch with a super massive flank on the side as well. Kanze just free hitting as Super Saiyan A's is spacing as well. Twitch picks up 2 kills. Silas in the middle of all of them, like I said, with that LeBlanc distortion. And a really clean play from the side of Reef Tsunami. And all of this positioning and all of this communication does just mean that they win the team fight instantly.
Fly looking to burst down AK here, but the Rakan gonna have an ally to dash back to. And yeah, it was from the side of Connecting Esports, you know, thinking that they were gonna have strength in numbers. If they just move into the river together, they should be able to contest. But in reality, it was Reef that had them right where they wanted them, you know, able to come at that fight from a couple of different angles, finding a couple of really nice flanks, you know, as you mentioned, for the Silas and for the Twitch as well, to open up on the side there, and kind of just melted through those health bars so quickly. Even this early on, you know, those item completions, you mentioned the shield bow already. I believe the Blade of the Ruin King was done for Kanze in that fight as well, so just a really high amount of upfront damage they were able to put out, as Kanze getting engaged on him in the mid lane, but the chain not going to land for Fly that time.
And it's just a matter of Reef are on the same page. They played that team fight because they knew that they were all on their spikes, and on the side of Connecting Esports, like I said, a little bit disconnected. They don't quite have any of their item breakpoints. It looks like Graves knew that they were going to fight for that second dragon, so he rushed his shield bow. Silas, similarly, rushed the Night Harvester. Similarly as well, Twitch has enough gold to pick up that Blade of the Rune King with his tier 2 boots, but on the side of Connecting Esports, they have tier 2 boots on all 3 of their lanes, right? Wukong has tier 2s. Oh, yeah, a little bit of a fight in the top lane.
Chain didn't land. Shipx is fine. That was dangerous, though. Walk up
but
like
yeah,
that. Raccoon's face.
It is tier 2 boots for every single solo laner and the jungler for the side of Connecting Esports, which means that they're a little bit behind in this team fight, like you said. And looks like they're going to try and fight bot side, though.
Yeah, they're going to get the Cyclone onto the Silas. Super Mega Death Racket going to connect as well. Raccoon forced to flash underneath the turret to avoid the second knock-up. Mr. now still holding on to that one. Going to be able to get it onto the Rakan and the Twitch. But Wukong, a little bit of a ways to go to get towards safety. And he's not going to make it there. It's going to be A's that picks up the last hit on that one. First kill of the game for the Graves. And now 4 men strong for Reef Tsunami in this bottom lane. Looking to take down the tier 1. Fly waiting off in the wings on the LeBlanc. And A is going to spot him out now. Graves going to immediately get chunked at 50%, but the Grand Entrance is there for the lockdown, and then the collateral damage. A's going to immediately punch back, takes down that LeBlanc. Stacks knocked off the seal as well as Captain, and looking once again in this top side. Has the Divine Sunderer completed, and I don't think Cho'Gath's going to have a very good time. Doesn't even have the Feast available. We'll try to flash away from that hook shot, but Cho'Gath, you don't have a turret here, man. It's way too long, this journey you're trying to go on. I don't think he's gonna make it. The slow comes through, and a Cho'Gath's ultimate about to be used against him here. No, actually, just barely. The hook shot cooldown too long, and Luke is going to be able to survive.
Yeah, Captain on that chase, just chasing a little bit too long. It looks like not quite able to make it to him as Luke just tossing out those abilities to disengage. Really good from him to be able to walk away there. Arguably perfectly calculated from Luke, I would say. He knew that he would make it to his turret, I guess, and ends up just being able to walk away there. But a little bit scary, and that's exactly how I would describe the side of Reef Tsunami here. They're a little bit scary. They have item leads on all of their carries. They're in good positions for these team fights, and I would be afraid right now if I were the side of Connecting Esports, and they really need to be able to group up, play these team fights well, and use their leads effectively. They had leads originally, but they hadn't quite backed and gotten their item resets to be able to fight on item breakpoints, and that put them behind, and they were fighting without those items, and now they have their items. So we'll have to see if with this empowered strength, Connecting Esports can actually find something from now on.
We shall see. They're down about 3,500 gold at the moment, and Fly's losing some of that health bar as well. The Stolen LeBlanc ultimate for Raccoon is going to do pretty much nothing, as we've seen many times already. Fly going to be able to make it out, but very low HP on that LeBlanc, and that's with this third dragon alive and raring to go on this Rift. Herald going to be dropped in mid lane for some pressure for Connecting Esports, trying to push their way into the river. Now Rakan Grand Entrance away to stay safe. Graves over the wall, getting out some initial damage. Mr. Bakala now on the front lines, forced to flash away from the counterattack coming through from Reef. A's now stripping forward pretty far. Mr. McCall with the R2. Trunks down Gonze extremely low, and that's going to be the first reset. Jinx now excited, getting that kill onto the Twitch. Chipex now feeling empowered, stepping forward, but that's going to be Raccoon connecting the change over the wall. Captain and now flashing forward, looking to get that lockdown onto the AD carry. They still have not managed to take down Chipex, but they've taken down everybody else. The front line is gone, and the Jinx now not able to hit anymore. The support going to get cleaned up as well, as Raccoon picks up the double. 8 stacks now on the seal for the Silas, and it will be Mountain Soul points as well.
Chipex, the last man standing, no longer is also the last man to go down, so Captain Nin does end up securing that last kill, and that's an unofficial ace for the side of Reef Tsunami, and they won it. They won that team fight with ease, with grace, and despite really superior spacing and kiting from the side of Connecting Esports and Chipex. We'll see it in the replay here. He played so well to keep so much space between him and the Camille, him and A's, him and the Silas. So many damage threats on the side of Reef Tsunami, but that one catch, max range chain. Camille ends up engaging A's over the wall, just absolutely demolishes the LeBlanc. Luke left alone, gets focused down as well. Wiggy in a rough spot, does end up getting taken down because of the recon engage. So literally the entire team of Reef Tsunami firing on all cylinders for that team fight, and that means that they end up securing the fight and literally 5 kills for themselves.
Yeah, honestly, really impressive team fighting coming out from Reef there. They lost Kanze, they lost the Twitch kind of right at the beginning. You know, the Twitch was the first casualty, I believe, of that entire fight, as Luke, is he going to be able to get away this time? There's another Cho'Gath ultimate. The Rupture, it's not going to land. I think that means Captain, one more swipe from the Scissor Legs means Camille picks up number 4, 4-0 and 2. Now Captain and Reef top laner really taking full advantage of this counter matchup as Raccoon, though, is very much caught out. So that's going to be a kill given back over into Shipex's pockets. 4v4 now on the map as AK going to get knocked up by the Cyclone. Mr. looking for a little bit more there. Going to get the flash out of the Rakan. But this Camille is currently not being answered in the side lane, and that's going to be a dead Jinx as Shipex gets caught out a little bit in that mid lane. The power of the Twitch as Kansai was able to walk up in invisibility, and now the quickness has been popped, and Mr. has been knocked up. The Wukong is going to the shooting gallery, and he's not the one holding the gun. That's going to be Graves picking up another kill as well. Meanwhile, Captain taking out the tier 3 in the bottom lane. Now, at this point, Drake, it's just Connecting Esports are getting pulled apart.
Reap Tsunami absolutely crashing in a huge wave over the side of Connecting Esports, literally mowing them down in their own jungle, and it all started with this Twitch with Kansai in the mid lane. It looked silly to us, looked silly to the spectators, but like you said, this Twitch in stealth is not what Shipex is expecting. He's not aware of where the Twitch actually is, and that means that he could be anywhere, and looks like he was hiding literally right next to you, and he starts autoing you, you just insta-die with any help, and that's exactly what ended up happening. Shipex falls, the entire team of Connecting Esports falls with him, formerly called Shipex United. If Shipex is dead, there's nothing to unite to, and Reef Tsunami definitely finding Shipex and Connecting Esports' number in this game.
Yeah, Reef Esports definitely looking a little bit more united, a little bit more connected in this match. I think there is little doubt at this point, able to secure a pretty early Baron for themselves. Really kind of just taking over this entire map. Only a couple minutes away until they're going to have a Mountain Soul on the table as Fly is in an awkward position there. Had to double distort back behind his own turret. Will be able to survive. The turret likely will not. As here comes Mr. into the mid lane, but just not able to engage onto just a Rakan.
I mean, Reef are playing so well, they're playing around their advantages, and they're bearing down with a Baron. There's nothing you can really do in this scenario as the side of Connecting Esports. You kind of have to let your turrets fall and cut your losses. Look for some sort of engage, look for some sort of fight, some sort of way back into this game if there's a misstep from the side of Reef Tsunami, but if they don't misstep, then there's nothing to capitalize on, and you just kind of lose your turrets.
Okay, here comes Mr. Nope, can't find it, as Kansai just opts into the invisibility, heads into the stealth there, and denies Wukong from being able to look for that play. And yeah, man, I gotta say, I mean, we do see the Infinity Edge now completed for A's, but even before that Infinity Edge completion, like in that big team fight that happened in the bot side river before the third dragon, like that was still one item Graves, and he was like chunking out the Cho'Gath, man. Like, has one item Graves always done this much damage, or are those the buffs coming into play?
So it's a tricky question to answer, isn't it? Because you say, is it the buffs coming into play, or has Graves always done this? And the answer is they didn't actually make the pellet change the pellet nerf to Graves until recently. It was earlier this season, I believe. And that means that I want to say the second patch of this season, yeah, Graves always did it. Graves was always doing this much damage with his pellets. His crit damage has always been absurdly high. And the reality is it's back to exactly what it was. So he's going to be doing tons of damage, and this champion is just so absurd with crit. It's just his only weakness is he can't auto attack through anything. So if you're in a position where you can't hit somebody because there's something in the way, like a turret.
Kansai immediately trying to flash away from that Cyclone, going into the stealth now, trying to create a little bit more time, a little bit more space. He is just barely going to be able to stay alive, and Mr. Bakal will fall for that attempt on the AD carry's life. Shipex still alive, off on the flank there, but the stolen Cyclone, and Raccoon flashes for the lockdown, gonna get himself straight on top of that AD carry. The support now is going to get cleaned up as well. 3 for nothing in the mid lane. Reef Esports,
maybe
Reef Tsunami once again on top as, oh yeah, that was the teleport from Luke that barely got the Cho'Gath to safety. Could be the end of the game here, Drake.
Captain in, bearing down on those Nexus turrets like you're saying, and it definitely threatening the end of the game. Reef Tsunami knocking on the doors of Connecting Esports' Nexus once again, end up taking 2 more inhibitors from the side of Connecting Esports, but looking to back off, maybe reset, play this game a little bit safer. It is the last game they need to win before they get 1 series away from the finals in the CWL playoffs series for Division 1, the highest league, like you said, that CWL has. So definitely an important match, and want to take it a little bit careful and slow.
Reef Esports looking for their 4th consecutive Division 1 championship as an organization. That pedigree really showing right now in this match. You know, it's 5 brand new players that weren't here last season, but you know, it seems like it doesn't really matter. This Reef organization, you know, they just, something about them, they just consistently manage to find themselves near the top of the standings, you know, looking for these championships, looking for these titles.
And Connecting Esports putting up a good fight. They found their instances of carry potential. They found their instances of winning these games, but like you said, Reef Tsunami just playing extremely well to capitalize on every single mistake that Connecting Esports makes and really choking them out. And we'll see that more as they bear down on the inhibitor turret, the final inhibitor turret in Connecting Esports' base.
It just seems like a matter of crossing T's and dotting I's at this point for Reef Tsunami. Only that one inhibitor turret still standing. Super minions already streaming into the base from the bottom side. And now the minion wave coming in the top lane as well. It is Connecting Esports here to defend. Looking to hold out for as long as they can. Mr. Bakal, Nimbus Strike forward. Not going to find anything. Collateral damage used by A's as well. You see the split on the bottom side.
Yeah, these turrets are just taking so much damage from these minions, if you will. And it's something that happens at post 20 minutes, pre 30 minutes. These super minions just do so much damage, and they're so hard to clear out without any items. And looks like Connecting Esports were able to hold back the onslaught, are able to keep their top inhibitor turret alive, but they have to deal with these waves, and the Baron is on the options and on the cards for the side of Reef.
Yeah, they should be able to burn this down pretty quickly. You know, once again, Connecting Esports are moving in. They want to fight for this one, but it's the Rope-a-Dope. It's Raccoon teleporting into the base, straight onto the Nexus turrets, and now all Reef have to do is stop the resets. Oh, it's LeBlanc who did manage to get back to base. I don't know if Fly can hold by himself, though. And it's the side of Reef just kind of toying with them right now. It's Mester going in for the Cyclone. That is going to be the Twitch that gets taken down. Meanwhile, in the base, Kyle's able to find the solo kill underneath the Nexus turrets, and Camille Captainin has made his way over to watch his mid laner end the game. Raccoon gonna put the finishing touches on it, and Reef Tsunami walk away with the 2-0 and find themselves in the upper bracket final for Season 5.
Really well played from the side of Reef Tsunami. They, like you said, crossed their T's and dotted their I's. They played extremely well, and they maintained that level of play throughout this series. They had a couple of hiccups in the early game, in this game as well as the last, but despite Connecting Esports putting up a really good fight and a really good adaptation between these two drafts, it wasn't quite enough to take down Reef.
Absolutely the case. You know, Fly did have a much better game this time around, particularly in that laning phase, but like you said, was not enough. This time it was Reef kind of just masterminding these team fights, just outplaying in the fights. You know, obviously the side lanes were very much in their favor as well, particularly Captainin with that R5 Camille pick, obviously finishing the game 5-0-2 with the highest damage, topping out those damage charts at just under 20k. So, you know, definitely well played there, but Reef, I think, just showing that they are the better team overall.
And I think it's important to note that these stories continue to go on. I mean, these two teams just played in this series, but the playoffs are still going on, and the playoffs will go into the second and third rounds after one more game between two other teams, I believe. But I think it's important to note that the result from this game does mean that Connecting Esports has a shot to either progress to round 3 of the playoffs bracket or stay in round 2 of the playoffs bracket, depending on, I believe it was game time, because this team as well as Limelight, which we watched yesterday, LLR, they actually have the same amount of match wins and I believe the same placement in their groups. So it is going to be entirely dependent on a very slight factor whether this team moves on to the third round or the second round, and it's going to be very interesting to watch this team and Limelight's and just every single team that we've seen in the past 2 days, all 4 teams, just really interesting to see their journeys from here.
Yeah, I mean, that's looking like an absolute banger in that upper bracket final. Polymorph versus Reef Tsunami. I mean, both squads are looking incredible over these last couple of days. And is that actually what we're playing tomorrow? Is that Polymorph versus Reef Tsunami, or are we doing it's one
I'm
of
pretty
the
sure it's
lower
UWE
brackets?
versus DCG down in the lower bracket, I would assume.
Okay. Yeah, so we're
Just
gonna have
finishing
to
off
wait
round
a
one,
while for that round 4 matchup. But boy, oh boy, is that something to look forward to, guys, because that should be an absolute banger. There's no way I think that is a 2-0. Maybe I just giga cursed it, but either way, Reef and Polymorph looking really, really exceptional. And like you said, Connecting Esports and Limelight Royalty also had some moments. It was pretty decisive. Both of these first matches in our playoffs here, but Connecting Esports and Limelight definitely showed that we're able to find angles, right? So they like certainly have the ability to pull off these upsets. It's just a question of shoring up the consistency a little bit and trying to be a little bit more cohesive as a team, I think, to really be able to stand up to these top dogs.
Yeah, I think that, like you said, they just need to have a little bit more practice, maybe develop throughout these lower stages in the playoff bracket, and they have a chance, right? Like you said earlier on in the day, their hopes are not quite crushed entirely. They still have one more chance. They have one last chance to win the finals, to make it all the way through the lower bracket, back into the finals, to play against the winner of the round 4 upper bracket final game before the finals. And it's definitely going to be interesting to see how these teams develop. I loved watching them, and I'll be super excited to see how they progress throughout the format and throughout the playoffs.
MVP vote is up now, guys, in the Discord channel, in the cafe. Make sure you head over there. Let us know. Logic is actually giving you the choice this time, surprisingly. So you can actually go ahead and cast your vote, and we're going to have one of these 5 players who are all listed as options going to be voted the MVP. And I assume we're going to have another MVP interview tonight as well. So that is going to happen. So, that who you want to hear get interviewed may factor into your decision as well. Keep that in mind. Who's your POG for this one, Drake? Who are you casting your vote behind?
So I think you highlighted something that I may have underplayed and may have just under-assessed and addressed in the first game of this series, and I think it was the impact that AK Haspun had in the game and in these 2 games. I think that as a support player, he definitely just showed that he had class, he had control, and he played super well in these team fights to facilitate his team. So my MVP does end up going over to the support of Reef Tsunami, and I feel like it's well-deserved. Everybody on this team played extremely well, but I think that this game definitely it goes to him.
I like it. The Rakan pick itself, first of all, very vibe. Great pairing with the Twitch, great, gives them some more engage in a composition where they really needed it, and was really strong into a lot of what Connecting were showing from the blue side as well. So the pick itself, phenomenal. And then the gameplay also left very little to be desired. AK did such a phenomenal job of baiting out key abilities from his opponents, of playing around his invisible AD carry, and just some really phenomenal engages, knowing exactly when to go in with those grand entrances, with the quickness on the Rakan. Really excellent support play, no doubt about it. But, Captainin and A's both deathless in this second game. And that's actually, I believe, the 0 death match for Captainin in that top lane. 0 deaths across 2 games. So that is feeling pretty MVP worthy as well.
It's true. There's so many factors in a game like this, in a series like this, where these 2 teams are playing so well, and despite both teams playing well, every single team member on the side of Tsunami are just firing on all cylinders. I've said it so many times, but it's just the best way I can describe it. They're playing so well. They're playing around each other. They're communicating and making very few mistakes. And Captainin, like you said, highlighting underlining the definition of not making mistakes by 0 deaths in an entire series is just not something to be scoffed at all.
Indeed. The captain from the top lane making it happen. We're going to go ahead and head to a short break, guys, before that interview. Make sure you go over there. Once again, cast your votes while you have the opportunity, and we'll see you back here real soon. We are joined here in the CWL studio by Reef Tsunami jungler Super Saiyan A's after that very decisive 2-0 over Connecting Esports. A's, congratulations. You and the squad have now found yourselves in the upper bracket final, only 2 opponents away from being crowned the Division 1 champion once again. How are you feeling? How's the squad feeling after that win?
Yeah, for me personally, it's very nice. I think everyone was happy, even though they were a little bit nervous about it. But yeah, we're very happy. We've gone far already, and we want to take the trophy back.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you're, like I said, you're in a pretty good position to try and make that happen. You said some of the other players were a little bit nervous, though. Is that something that you've been kind of struggling with very much in the postseason, or is it just something that's kind of coming to the front now that you're, in these really high stakes matches towards the end?
I think it was more about at the start we were like, we actually don't know how the groups are, and we don't know how this first group was, so we didn't really have we had a lot of scouting going on, right? We have our coach Metal, who did a lot of research, so we were well prepared going into it. But when you play against another group, it feels hard because we don't have the information, right? So
Yeah,
it could be a group, definitely could not be.
makes a lot of sense. You weren't really as sure what to expect from this opponent, but definitely you came out swinging, and I guess they were the ones who should have been nervous in the end.
Yeah.
Drake, you got some?
Yeah, I was curious.
Oh, sorry. No. I thought you asked me. Okay, because it's quite funny because the regular jungler, that is Bunny, he's currently unavailable, so we're filling in here, and we're playing with very few scrims as well. So I'm glad to see the chemistry is here as well. I think we're playing all together, and we had like the same idea in the few scrims we actually had to play. So I'm very happy for the boys, and yeah, it's always so nerves going in when you play with a new guy you haven't played with at all.
Sure.
Yeah, I was curious, do you take more of a commanding lead in the communications? And I feel like junglers typically do, just because you see more of the map, that junglers and supports tend to be kind of the voice for teams. So I was curious if it was maybe a little bit difficult finding your voice in a team that you once again weren't practiced or as practiced with as maybe the main jungler. I was curious maybe how that dynamic went down in games.
Yeah, so me and Nono, or Bunny or whatever, we've been knowing each other for a long time. We've been matching up a lot. We've been playing each other a lot when we are different teams, and we have kind of different play styles and ideologies and how to jungle, because he's not that vocal of a guy, and I'm kind of the opposite. But we have very similar like play styles because of the champions we play and how we want to play them. So the actual champions themselves and how the team plays, I fit pretty well in. But my role is kind of different because I'm used to being very vocal and being like the deciding caller. But in this team, it's very like everyone is chipping in kind of thing.
Very nice. That's pretty impressive that, you're able to come in as a substitution, but still have that big voice in the team, being able to take the lead sometimes in shot calling. That's definitely pretty impressive. But Ace, I wanted to take a minute to pick your thoughts a little bit actually on that Game 1 draft. I noticed a couple of things that I thought were really interesting. First of all, you guys seems to have a really big focus on trying to ban out Mister's jungle picks. I noticed you consistently removing the Vi. I believe you removed the Wukong in Game 1 as well. I think the Jarvan was also banned. So I kind of wanted to get your thoughts there, like if that was kind of your idea, where you felt like the side of Mister should be targeted in that banning phase, or if that was something that more the team was looking to do. And I also, of course, wanted to get your thoughts on the Gragas pick just in general, because you guys did lock it in on B1, so really high priority on that Gragas pick. Is this something that's like a big comfort pick for you, or just something that you felt like would be good in this matchup?
Yeah, before I came into this interview, I was actually asked by my coach to not talk about draft really.
Oh,
so
okay,
I don't really have any information regarding that. I don't know the bans.
Okay.
That was decided by the coaching staff, so.
I didn't mean to try and put you on
of course
the
not.
spot there.
I'm gonna listen to the coach here and say he doesn't want the secrets leaked, so we're not.
Yeah.
The draft secrets.
Yeah, I mean he's putting in a lot of work, so a really big shout out to Metal for this. Like, all the spreadsheets, all the things going in, everything like that. It's really amazing. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Love that shout out for the coach. If we can't talk about draft, let's just stick to gameplay then. Gragas in the jungle, of course. I don't think the early game in Game 1 was necessarily that explosive. It really did feel like it mostly came down to team fights. I am thinking of a really chaotic fight in the river around the third dragon, where you guys were trying to get on top of the Zeri, and I think it was Silas, I think it was Raccoon, who almost managed to take Zeri down and got the flash, and then you went over the wall with the flash body slam to actually finish the job on that one. Do you remember the fight that I'm talking about?
Yeah, I completely remember.
Yeah, but what were the calls like in that specific situation? Like, were you the one saying okay, go, we got to get onto Zeri, or was that somebody else and you just following up in that instance?
So the play was kind of where we know we have a good front to back, and if we can get a reset, we can let Jinx run over the fight, because we have, in our opinion, a better front to back. So we just needed to make sure that the Zeri doesn't just chip at us away. So we take position first, and we allow them to walk into us, so Jinx can actually create space and create damage. And then if the Zeri has to walk forward, she's doing less DPS because of the way the champion works. So we just allow her to do that. Then she had some take and some poke, and the moment she's finished, I just suicide bomb in. I take the sacrifice. As if we kill Zeri, the Jinx can just clean the rest of the fight up, and yeah, they did. So I trusted my team here, and they pulled it off.
Really nice from production there to be able to pull up that replay for us. Thank you very much, Logic. beautifully illustrating what our man Ace was just talking about there. But back over to you, Drake. You got another question for us?
Yeah, I was also curious of another very particular situation. For some reason, it stuck in my head. But I remember very vividly in the second game, actually, you were playing Graves, obviously, and you were just running into bottom lane Tribrush. I think it was early game, pre-level 6, and you just ran straight through. You ran under tier 1 turret, just like saying hi to Recon, just giving everybody a little hug and then walking away. I was curious what the comms were there, where like you had your LeBlanc moving down, I believe, but it was just kind of strange to me to just see you walk into bot lane, say hi to everybody, and then just walk away.
Yeah. So we knew they had some vision in the river bush, but we thought they didn't have it in Tribush. So we thought there might be an angle there because they were kind of far pushed up in the wave, or they might have been taking some greedy recalls. And the mid lane had just died at the moment, and top lane was kind of out of reach because I couldn't fight the Wukong at the top side scuttle. So it was kind of just a play to see if it happens, and we get a great lead. Because the laning phase early is really hard for Twitch Rakan, but once we get to like over the late, like the early before level 6, it gets a lot easier. So if we can get it accelerated earlier, we take those. But yeah, they didn't allow it. They defended it well, so
makes a lot of sense.
I mean,
yeah. Go ahead.
Definitely. I was. you take it away, Grimmin. You take it away, man.
Okay. I was just gonna say that I did think that was really impressive because I felt like you guys had some really pretty heavily scaling drafts, honestly, in both games, but you still managed to play them very aggressively in the early game to try and find those advantages. So always like to see that. You kind of get the best of both worlds as long as you know the limits of your composition, which seems like you guys absolutely did. But I actually wanted to now go ahead and give you a question from our man Logic here. Logic wants to know if you miss your old team, Ratatosker, from last season of the CWL there, Ace.
Yeah, that's personal question from my boy Logic, and of course there's some good memories to be had, but as I am, moved on for certain reasons, it's less of a I miss you playing with you guys, and rather than I miss the camaraderie. As I'm currently teamless, it's fun playing in a team, but there's like, I don't talk to a lot of the guys anymore anyway, so there's not much going on for that.
Maybe you guys can be reunited at some point.
Maybe an All-Star series or something.
Yeah, oh, there we go. There's an idea.
Yeah.
Could make it happen.
Production.
Yeah, we have the power. Just have to wait and see. Drake, you want to get in there with another one?
Yeah, I was just curious. I would assume that you guys watched the VODs, or at least a couple of them against Polymorphed, the games that Polymorphed actually was playing, so I was curious whether you feel prepped for Polymorphed. Do you feel like you guys are ready to play against them, and what are your thoughts going ahead in just into the future and just when you're about to play Polymorphed?
I have absolutely no idea who they are. In my eyes, they're randoms.
From the other group, right?
Yeah, again, if I don't do a lot of the prep, I show up, I do my business, I smurf it around, It is how it is. They're randoms. And we're gonna stump them too as well.
Okay.
Ooh, fighting words. All right. Polymorphed. Maybe they're shaking in their boots now. Some very confident talk from our MVP jungler here. But how's the team just feeling in general? I think you did mention kind of at the beginning of the interview that you all are feeling pretty confident. You're really hungry for that next title.
Oh yeah, it's gonna. I have been playing for the team. It's gonna be my first title, but I think some of the boys are. I think it's gonna be the first title for everyone actually, because I think we did a complete revamp. So
yeah,
bringing it down to the club, but yeah, I think Kansai won earlier. So
yeah,
production gonna be returning for him.
Us that Kansai had that season 1 championship.
Yeah. So let's bring it back for Kansai so he can get his second one, and then let's start stacking on the other boys.
Yeah, we love to see it. I think you got a real shot. Drake, you got anything else for our MVP here?
No, I think you played really well, man, especially considering that you were in a position where you maybe hadn't played with the team as much as maybe a regular on a team would, and maybe you would have liked to, but really well played today, man, and good carry performances in both games.
Yeah, fantastically played, definitely, by the Reef Tsunami MVP substitute jungler. Ace, we're going to hand over the mic to you here for a second if you have any shout-outs for the stream or any words for your teammates or opponents.
Yeah, first I want to shout out my teammates. I think we all played well today. Not a single stone unturned in that way. And then our opponents, good luck. You're going to need it.
Ooh,
And then
all right.
follow follow me on Twitter to his face.
All right, we even got the social shout out in there. Thank you for joining us for the interview, A's. Congratulations again on your 2-0 tonight and on making your way into those upper bracket finals.
Thank you.
All right, that was A's guys jungler for Tsunami. We were warned he was a little bit of a memer, but it seemed for the most part, he was a pretty straight shooter in that interview at least. What do you think, Drake?
Yeah, I thought he was a really nice guy. He seemed humble in success, just like a lot of the people that we've interviewed here in the CWL. So really happy to meet another player and another victor. So happy that they won, proud of him, and just, yeah, really nice guy.
Yeah, taking a look at this bracket once again, guys. We do have, of course, a little bit more of it filled out now. Hopefully we can get an updated bracket potentially for tomorrow's stream with some of these positions actually filled out. But it is, of course, going to be polymorphed, going up against Reef Tsunami in that 4th round upper bracket. That match just to the right of where it says Division 1, and that is shaping up to be an absolute banger. Winner of that one, of course, as you can see, will then move on into the grand finals. The loser of that upper bracket final then will have to play in the lower bracket final against whoever wins out in this gauntlet between Limelight Royalty Connecting Esports and these other two teams that started off in that lower bracket.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see how this ends up playing out. These teams have done so well, and these stories are just progressing further and further. And after this next game in the series, which will take place tomorrow, I believe we are streaming as well. Although I believe both you and I will not be here for it. We'll, of course, be watching and following along as well as a fan, as everybody else in the chat. So glad to be here and really excited to see how this playoffs format and playoffs bracket ends up progressing.
Yeah, quite right, Drake. UWE versus DCG going to be the matchup tomorrow. Should be starting at right around the same time. I'm not sure 100% on the exact start time there, but just keep your eyes tuned over here to the YouTube channel, and you shouldn't miss a thing. But yeah, Drake, we did have the opportunity to be here for the opening of the Season 5 playoffs over the last couple of days. What are your thoughts overall? What are you... What did it stood out to you the most, and what are you looking forward to here as we progress through the Season 5 postseason?
I think it's definitely interesting that we saw 2 stomps. We saw, well, I mean, arguable stomps, right? There were opportunities for all of the teams to win in relatively all of these games, but a stomp by Polymorphed and a stomp by the side of Reef Tsunami does mean that 2 really strong teams have moved on to match 1 in round 4, which should be a banger series like we were talking about. So seeing these 2 teams face off, they should be relatively well matched, and I'm excited to see how they actually get on and which team actually makes it to the finals and which team has to be dropped down to the lower bracket to fight their way back into the finals again, maybe. But also really excited to see how the 2 losers of the first games in round 1 get on. They both have the potential. We've seen it, we've mentioned it, and we've seen how they've developed in drafts throughout the series as well. So every single team that we've seen in this playoffs so far has the potential to win it. It just depends on how they progress and how they actually develop as teams throughout the weeks. So really excited just to see the growth and to see these storylines develop.
100%, Drake. We've talked a lot about Polymorphed and Reef already, but it's going to be really interesting to see who emerges from that lower bracket as well. Definitely not going to want to miss a thing, guys, as we continue here in the Season 5 playoffs for the Cobalt Wins League. But that is going to pretty much do it for us tonight. So from myself, from Drake here, once again, from the entire production team at the Cobalt Wins League, thank you all so very much for watching. We appreciate you all so much, as always. And we'll see you again tomorrow for that first matchup from the lower bracket. For now, thank